What eventually disappeared and no one noticed? Story 1. Toys in cereal boxes. Those lightsaber pens General Mills had. I bought a lot of Cinnamon Toast Crunch trying to complete the set. Not only did I never get a green one, but I don't even know what happened to the other ones I did get. More importantly, toys in Cracker Jack. They don't even come in a box anymore, they come in a bag. And speaking of prizes, you don't get those chance to win under the cap sweepstakes on drinks anymore. Everything is a code that the majority of people probably never take the time to enter on a website. Used to be able to just look under the cap to see if you've won, and then mail the cap to the company. My brother could tell which toy came from which box by licking it, even a year later. Story 2. Fireflies, aka lightning bugs. I live in a rural area and I used to see hundreds on a warm summer night. Now I get excited if I just see one. I mentioned it to other people who live in the same area as I do and they were just like, huh, yeah, you're right. I'm a biologist and we categorize fireflies as bioindicators, meaning if they are a lot in an area, it really says a lot about the environmental quality of that area. They usually thrive in areas where there is less light pollution, since bioluminescence is their primary mode of communication. Insert artificial light in the equation and you disrupt their mode-species interaction. Pesticides and light pollution. Suburbia is pseudo-nature. Most people pour chemicals on every weed they can because they want lush carpet grass that is stupid hard to maintain, and they keep every single light outdoors at all times. I've lived in my house for 6 years and have watched this unfold. I do not want to spend all day in my yard. I put clover out and I just pull some of the larger weeds that sprout up. My outdoor lights get turned off when not in use or when going to bed. It's really not that hard not to destroy nature. Rake your leaves to the central bed or mulch them. Don't put them in a plastic bag. Let your grass be mixed. It will help replenish soil nutrients and you won't have to spray those nutrients all over the wildlife that is trying to live out there. Put lights on motion sensors. I lived across the street from a wooded area my entire childhood, and after I left for college they bulldozed it and built an Amazon warehouse. When I went back the first time for spring break, it was like night and day. So depressing. Thanks, Bezos. Story 3. I never see swarms of monarch butterflies anymore. It's a combination of a rise in pesticides combined with an absolute dearth of the plants that butterflies eat on their journey. If you plant monarch butterfly-friendly gardens, you'll actually likely become a stop on their migration patterns because it's so needed. It should also be noted that they lay their eggs on milkweed plants, and that's the only plants that nurture and grow their larvae into pupae. And milkweed has been heavily removed from gardens and the wild as we grow our cities and agriculture. By planting a number of monarch butterfly gardens, or honestly general pollinator gardens, as well as providing a water source like a puddling fountain, a shallow bowl fountain, or some form of water feature in your gardens, you can really help all pollinators, but specifically monarchs due to your question. I live in Minnesota and we see monarchs from time to time, but when you plant the flowers they eat, you can start to see dozens or more during the migration season as they love those plants. I planted milkweed and finally last year saw some monarch friends. Then I saw the wasps circling the caterpillars. Stupid ecosystem, no pupa for me. I'll give you the bog standard answer that if you leave them alone and simply stay still and calm, if they come over to investigate, you'll get out sting-free virtually 100% of the time. I study insect ecology specifically. In the last near decade of regularly going insect collecting, I've collected sweat bees, velvet ants, tarantula hawk wasps, and much more. I've been stung a total of 0 times. The one time I've been stung, I was walking near a pool and stepped on a poor little bee. The other time, an insect hurt me. It was a beetle I picked up that bit me. It's all behavior. My sister-in-law gets stung all the time because she panics and swats at anything that flies near her. I quickly explained to my niece to never move if one is inspecting you because 9 out of 10 times you're just wearing something that looks like a flower they want to pollinate. Now I watch while my sister-in-law gets stung and my niece lets them crawl all over her and has never once been stung. If you do get stung semi-frequently, just consider it the price of business for having trees and flowers. A little blood sacrifice to keep on enjoying the green stuff. It's mostly just because of population decrease. It's not going to happen until we have consecutive seasons with positive population growth in the US and Canada, without any catastrophic events to halt the momentum in Mexico, like winter storms, illegal logging, etc. Story 4. Somewhere along the way, 9 to 5 turned into 8 to 5. They got paid for lunch. The idea was that them being there at lunchtime was because the company paid them to be there the entire time. Companies also used to have company cafeterias that sold decent food at a very reasonable price. And wanting to work the typical Monday to Friday 9 to 5 is now viewed as a bad or lazy thing. That's the type of schedule I got at my workplace for the most part, but every so often I can tell they want me working some weekends or evenings. If 9 to 5 for 5 days a week isn't enough, what is anymore? The bar for nostalgia is getting very low, everybody. Story 5. Someone answering the phone at businesses. I have to call doctor's offices daily for work, and there is one that has a, I timed it, nearly 4-minute long opening message. It includes hours, address with directions, COVID policy, and new patient policy. You have to listen to the whole thing before it lets you hit the extension you want. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Yes, I spend a lot of time calling veterinary clinics at work, and there's one office that has a message just like that. I end up having to call them right after lunch every day when I'm at my most sleepy and unmotivated. I fall asleep when I call them because of that crap, every time. Fortunately, their music is set at max volume, so I get blasted awake by garbled Chuck Mangione just in time to deal with the meanest receptionist on earth. I mumble about setting their building on fire like Milton so much I'm worried it's HR actionable. I have literally hung up and driven to my doctor's office before. They said I wasn't the first. Story 6. Kinda surprised I haven't seen this one yet, but Ronald McDonald. You remember the old clown everywhere in and around McDonald's commercials and stores? Gone. Phased out when that clown scare prank trend was going around. About 30 years ago, we were at a funeral, and for some reason Ronald was visiting the attached parochial school, and somehow we connected. So I have photos of me with Ronald McDonald at my friend's uncle's funeral. It was more of a move by all fast food joints to self-regulate how they advertise to kids, or have the government crack down with legislation. Honestly, how many ads for cereal do you see anymore that use animated characters shilling sugar bombs without some sporting event? Also, remember when fast food joints were decked out for a movie release? They stopped doing a lot to avoid being told what they could do by Uncle Sam. In our town, they kept having a problem with kids taking obscene photos with Ronald, so eventually the poor old clown was retired. Story 7. A common pop culture in the US at least. Until at least the 80s, most people watched the same TV shows, saw the same movies, listened to the same music, could recite the same commercial slogans or jingles, bought into the same fads. I don't know when it happened, but now we are all siloed into highly specific subcultures. It was definitely the rise of the internet that really started to divide not just us in the US, but all over into subcultures. Or at the very least, when it became very noticeable that it had happened or started happening. I've heard this referred to as the death of monoculture. Back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, niche subcultures definitely existed. Think like the goth and punk scenes. But even the goth kids in 2000 knew all the characters of Friends, punk kids in the early 1990s knew about Nirvana, etc. Since the rise of social media, it's been easier to basically surround yourself in your preferred scene and completely avoid others. Algorithmic social media really accelerated this trend, and now you can get a TikTok feed that's entirely tailored towards you and doesn't give you any content that you're not interested in. This started right around when MySpace came around because the monoculture was definitely still a thing back in 2005. Everyone knew who Nickelback, Fall Out Boy, Green Day, 50 Cent, and Eminem were, even if you hated them, just because they were so big at the time. And they're still big today because they were the last big artists of the monoculture. But today, when people primarily discover subcultures through YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, Spotify, etc., the algorithm feeds you content that you want, while you can completely ignore cultures that you don't care for. I don't think this is the worst thing when it comes to things like music, TV, fashion, etc., but when it comes to things like social movements and politics, it's pretty dangerous. Social media sites will usually push people into an echo chamber that causes them to have a warped worldview. And now, even political ideologies have different entertainment. It's a good thing we all love freedom fries. Story 8. Having many family photographs in homes. Not completely gone, but homes used to be plastered in them. The only times I really noticed them is in the homes of elderly people. Got my wife a digital photo frame for the living room. It has all our family photos rotating with a focus on vacations and adventures. We have another in our bedroom that is for our wedding and honeymoon photos. 10 out of 10. Absolutely great investment. So many happy memories, and it never fails to put a smile on her face at least once a day. For parties, we'll purposefully change the photo sets to include anyone who's visiting to see if they they catch it, including brand new photos we took at the current party. It's cute and low-key hilarious when they realize the photo is 5 minutes old, replaced with live, laugh, love, or stenciling on the wall that says family. It's funny how we take 1,000 times more photos now, but none of them are worth framing. Story 9. People fainting when something unexpected happens, and people carrying smelling salts for just such an occasion. It's so 19th century. Bring it back. Wear corsets everywhere with way too many layers of dress. Have no air conditioning. Do cocaine or heroin for a toothache. Have clothes and walls dyed in arsenic. See how often you faint. To be fair, people weren't fainting from corsets. Only very appearance-driven women at high society events were tight-lacing to get extreme figures. The bulk of women wore corsets that fit their waists comfortably to give bust and back support while working, and the layers were not a huge problem as they were all natural fiber and helped with temp regulation. Abby Cox did a great video comparing the comfort and temperature of Victorian versus modern clothing in Nevada summer. The layers helped keep heat off the skin and wicked sweat well, unlike modern plastic-based fibers which trap heat and don't absorb sweat at all. Though you're right, they did expose themselves to a ton of toxic chemicals and gases in the home, even washing clothes with kerosene. Not only that, they had their own couches for it. Talk about a golden age to be hysterical. Story 10. Good value for price at restaurants. Restaurants have quietly reduced portion sizes since COVID without restoring them. Noodles & Company, along with many others, advertise large portions like pre-pandemic, but only give to-go sizes even when dining in, all for a higher price. As someone who unfortunately manages a Noodles & Company, the to-go and for here sizes have been the exact same for more than 4 years. They just only do food and to-go bowls even when dining in the restaurant. Noodles are broken as heck. Can't justify the labor cost of bringing back the white ceramic bowls. The only thing that's changed is the price. Everything's way more expensive now. Same portion sizes for years now though. There's a few restaurants that I go to that give insane portions. I love those places because for the price of a more expensive meal, you basically get 2 portions. You don't feel guilty for wasting food because it's not one of those not enough for next meal, too much for one meal things. It's 50% more expensive, but you get 2 full meals. The exception will always be your local Chinese takeout, keeping portions and recession-proof. Please support them today. Story 11. Longevity in careers. This is a big one nobody seems to have said. Longevity in careers has largely gone away. People used to get a job and after being there for decades reap the benefits of being seasoned employees, higher salaries, and better perks. Maybe it's because I work in the entertainment industry, but I feel that longevity in careers has gone away, meaning people can be amazing at a job, but after 5+ years, the employers start wondering if they could be doing better with a younger or cheaper candidate for the job. I understand if you ever want to move up in a workplace, they expect you to bring your A game, but 30+ years of being incredible is hard. Some years will be better than others, and if employers don't have loyalty to their employees anymore, it is likely the good employee will be fired or let go at some point. I feel like in recent decades, this has forced many people who normally wouldn't to switch careers. Can someone work successfully up the ladder at any job without having to shift to another company for a promotion? A combination of employers halting upward movement of their staff while they look for new employees to fill higher roles, and the fact that they got bored of their seasoned employees has largely killed the idea of anyone having a single career. I think a big problem is wages, and work has stagnated, and so when you want an improvement in your standard, you have to climb the ladder, but they expect the world from you at your own company to do that, so it's easier to look elsewhere with higher pay. You can't just comfortably live off the pay of your current role anymore as inflation takes hold. Shit, I remember when $60K a year was the goal for a fairly successful career. A decade later, under $100K is almost untenable. Employers stopped paying for your loyalty and act surprised when they no longer get it. There are no pensions. You earn too much money, so they hire someone new. Meanwhile, you could move across town and double your salary. Maybe the benefits are better for your needs at another company. And it all happened within a generation. A boomer would expect to be in the same job, the same career, not their kids. Those days are over. Story 12. Our need to know who our neighbors are. I listened to a podcast about human interaction recently, and the host said that the internet slowly made it possible to live without knowing who the people next door are. It used to be that we would hang out with people on our street, or attend dinners, birthdays, and whatnot. Now everyone seems to have no need to even so much as introduce themselves. The only time we do get to know each other is if we have a complaint. From my personal experience, this is what it was like. When you were just moving in, you're often welcomed by your neighbors. Sometimes they'd give you a gift. If not a gift, you'd at at least have that knock from the people next door, introducing themselves to you and just being casually friendly. They would tell you about the neighborhood itself, where to buy stuff, who to ask for help, and the things they expect you to do and not do. This was especially the case with really tightly knit communities where there was a strong homeowners association kind of presence. The neighborhood kids would be their own clique, and their respective families would often invite each other over for events, even road trips. Street parties were more common, especially when it involved fireworks or big boxing matches where someone would set their entire TV set outside and have a couch for anyone to sit. You'd know each other's stories and pass gossip to one another. This can be both a good and bad thing, of course. Like, it was normal for neighbors to know someone is being abusive or cheating on their partner, but they'd keep that quiet. This also formed circles within circles. Gossipers would have inside jokes about another neighbor. For example, I'm 33, so I'm a 90s kid, but back then I thought we were already isolated. However, knowing the people around you is still optional even if you live in an apartment where there's barely any space separating people. Regarding being in elementary school in the early 90s, I had one good friend that I hung out with on the weekends, but he lived several miles away, and I still remember his name. I spent way more time with the kids in my neighborhood but couldn't tell you any of their names. It was quite common to have the doorbell ring and there would be a group of kids on bikes, and I'd hop on mine and we'd all ride around town, or I'd ride up to the park, and if there was a game of tag going on, I could jump right in. My dad also didn't get home from work until like 6 or 7 at night, a lot of the time, so I knew all the adults in the houses next to me in case I needed something. At my mom's, there was a group of 4 houses that would rotate holding the Sunday cookout. Friday nights and Saturdays, everyone would do their own thing, but Sunday afternoons were always the get-togethers with a kind of early dinner, and then everyone would relax early before starting the Monday off again. I'm very friendly with my neighbors on one side, and I don't know the guy on the other side at all. Everyone else is just casual waves. This isn't by choice, but I think people are just very leery of anyone these days. It's sad. Story 13. Color from the world. Everything is becoming gray. Look at commercial buildings and fast food restaurants. McDonald's used to look fun and exciting. Now they're all gray and boring. In my area, we had the funnest looking McDonald's by the Dallas Zoo, and now it's being renovated for whatever reason to look like a standard gray colored McDonald's. No fun. Also, cars. Where did all the color go? They are all now the same muted gray, tan, light blue, or white. They are also boring. Look at the cars of even 20 years ago, and they were sporting some vibrant colors. On military bases, the colors are always muted to keep people's mind at ease. I wonder if it has trickled into society as a whole. Houses too. I love seeing a place where someone actually puts their personality into their home instead of leaving it cookie-cutter bland in an interest of resale value 6 years from when they bought it. If you get yourself a brick house, you don't have to worry about the color. It's always in style. Story 14. Postcards, and not just in the usual places like museum gift shops and tourist traps. There was once a time when you could buy at any truck stop or roadside motel a postcard of the small town that you were driving through, but not anymore. No point when you can just text your friends a photo. There was a restaurant I visited in Florida that gave you a postcard with your bill. You could write anything on it and add an address, and they would pay for the postage and send it for you. It was a neat novel concept from the restaurant. I wrote an extremely inappropriate rant on it and sent it to my mom's new address because she was planning to move, and I thought it would be really funny. She hadn't bought the house yet, and the older owners must have gotten a bizarre postcard in the mail. Oops. The restaurant is called YOLO in Fort Lauderdale. In Switzerland, the postal services provide an app where you can upload a picture, add a text, and address. It will then be printed and sent via snail mail directly and automatically. You can do that for free once a day and pay a little for each additional one. I quite like the idea and use it often for wholesome memes or for holiday pictures. Even obviously takes less time to get to the recipients. From time to time, I also use it to send myself photos so I can hang them up at home. I still have many from my grandma. I doubt our grandkids will be saving our texts. Story 15. Audio cassette tape pulled out and tangled in the shrubs of a strip mall. It was the gold standard parking lot decoration of the 90s. When I was around 13, I used to see videotape all over the place. I got the idea to collect it, re-spool it, and put it in a new case and see what was on it. Turned out to be someone's homemade porn tape. This started a 20-year hobby. I even designed a machine to clean and flatten it so it would play clearly. Found dozens of porn tapes over the years, some even with people I knew. Home movies, rental movies, etc. Sadly, as VCRs and camcorders were phased out, so did road tapes. I think physical media will see a resurgence at some point. I got into collecting vinyl after getting my dad's collection, and I realized just how much isn't on Spotify. So many old CDs and tapes that I can't stream that I'm sure my mom dumped in a yard sale decades ago. Everything is subscription-based now, and I could see an exodus from that at some point as people want to own their own entertainment again. Hey, it all looked pretty all lit up at Christmas. Story 17. Corporate pensions. 30 years ago, it was a standard benefit. 401ks turned out to be an excuse for corporations to junk pensions. And now they're doing the same to health insurance. They're being replaced by health savings accounts, which is essentially the privilege of paying for your health care out of your own pocket. Years ago, it was common to have PPO insurance with no out-of-pocket cost to you. You'd only have copays for prescriptions and office visits, but no weekly contribution needed to come out of your own check. Fast forward a few decades and now you're paying out the nose for a crappy HMO or HSA. Corporations dumped pensions because they are very expensive and difficult to run. An actuary was required to determine contribution levels. Many complicated filings, mostly to the IRS, are required. Records must be kept virtually forever. Many employees were dissatisfied with the expected payment, 60% of the average of the last 5 years' earnings, or some such, maybe, if the plan sponsor doesn't go bankrupt, and if the employee was vested. Vesting was 10 years. At my last employer, 401ks on the other hand are so simple that an employer can go buy one from many sources, such as Vanguard or Fidelity. No actuary is required. Compliance is greatly simplified. The payout is easily shown on the statement. If the sponsoring employer goes bankrupt, the funds can be rolled over to an IRA, typically for free. Pension, expensive and difficult for the employer, difficult to plan for the employee. 401k, simple and inexpensive for the employer, easy to understand for the employee. And now, with a little old thing like a global pandemic, your 401k can be totally wiped out. Who would have thought? Story 18. Plasma TVs. I had one and it died after we all watched an intervention marathon during COVID. TV repair shops, now that you mention it, it used to be a guy behind a counter with electronic guts all over the place. He'd give you a ticket and you had to listen to the radio for a week or two. At the time, I had a plasma. They ran pretty hot and would suffer from burn-ins. As I played a lot of video games with certain screen elements displaying for an extended time, burn-in was a concern. I think it was less of a problem later on, but their reputation was made by then, and the various kinds of LEDs had taken over. The industry has been largely replaced by salesmen with a very loose understanding of repair, but very skilled in selling extended warranties. Plasma TVs were only sold because of the cool-sounding name, but what's the other connotation to plasma? Blood. Story 19. Privacy in your daily life. I live in fear of being randomly filmed one day doing something and going viral. Alongside of the general concept of maybe I shouldn't expect everyone to be available to talk to me 24/7, I used to be able to leave the house and just not be bothered for a few hours. Now people get angry if you don't text back within a few minutes. I take pride in the reputation that I've developed for reading and responding to texts whenever I get around to it. Once you've trained your friends, family, and coworkers to not expect an instant response, they adapt just fine. Yeah, it's called not caring. It's a skill. Story 20. Fidget spinners. Go to any 7-Eleven or random gas station along an interstate. They still have them tucked into the lonely corner where they keep random things like kid toys and cheap cell phone chargers. As an adult with ADHD, it was bittersweet to see their rise in popularity among non-ADHD people. On one hand, it helped people understand fidget toys better, but on the other hand, it became such a nuisance in schools that a lot of schools banned them, which only hurt kids with ADHD who needed these aids. I'm glad their popularity among the general population has died down now, so people aren't on the lookout for them in class or meeting situations. They reminded me of Pogs, huge rise and spectacular fall as schools started to ban them. Story 21. The outrage over net neutrality. Can you explain the net neutrality situation to me? I feel like I had a grasp on it when it happened, but I do a lot of chemo now and forget things. My understanding is that maintaining net neutrality means that ISPs are neutral to the data you transfer through them. In other words, if an ISP had business dealings with HBO, then your ISP is not allowed to slow down traffic to Netflix, Disney+, etc. to make HBO's service seem better. Neutrality means that your ISP is agnostic to what you do with the the bandwidth you pay for. Just like electric companies and water companies don't much care how you use their power or water, major corporations in the ISP industry have an interest in ending net neutrality because they could then charge more for preferential bandwidth. They could do this by creating tiered packages that end users have to pay for. Want to stream video? Upcharge. Read the news at a reasonable speed? Upcharge, etc. Or they could do this by charging websites themselves. If you want your site to load quickly, you don't only have to worry about optimizing code, but entering into agreements with as many ISPs as possible. I admit that a lot of this is like what could happen, kind of fear-mongering stuff, but it's better to keep neutrality so that none of that bad stuff can happen in the first place. I haven't heard the words net neutrality in a long time. Story 22. CD or DVD drives in laptops. How can a laptop be $2,000+ and not even be able to play a CD or a DVD? But it can make you look like you're at the top of a mountain in the middle of a forest next to a family of magical beavers for an additional $49.99 a month. I watch Something Wicked This Way Comes every Halloween. This past year, since we have Disney Plus now, I figured I'd turn it on after we watched Hocus Pocus 2. Guess what wasn't in the library? Guess what I wouldn't have been able to watch for the first Halloween in about 20 years if I didn't have the DVD and a DVD player. I also don't trust that my internet won't drop out. It's gone down before and taken up to a week before the company will come out to fix it. Nah, I don't miss it. I'm fine with keeping an external drive on the shelf or in a drawer in the rare case I need one, as long as I don't have to have clunky, heavy laptops to lug around. Story 23. Refrigerators that would last 30 years instead of 6 years. Just to get everybody angrier about this, refrigerators are mostly non-recyclable. So as far as I know, they just end up in a landfill. The metal outer cabinet and the plastic liner are foamed together and can't be reasonably recycled. And the compressor is full of nasty oil that's usually burned and acidic by the time the refrigerator dies. I'll never buy another LG appliance. Next time my refrigerator kicks the bucket, I'm going on Craigslist and finding the old almond-colored enameled Frigidaire that we had when I was a kid that's probably still kicking around. Any appliances for that matter. My grandma still has the refrigerator she bought when she built her house in 1993. She even had a trash compactor until a year or so ago. I remember when I was a kid in the 90s, we had a gas-powered washing machine from like the 50s. Meanwhile, I've gone through 3 to 4 fridges in the last 10 years. I try to never buy electronics with too many touchscreens or gizmos. The more bells and whistles, the more can go wrong. Story 24. Phone books. I found myself wanting to use the Yellow Pages the other day so I could have a list of businesses that provided a service in my area that wasn't just a bunch of ads. Yes, I know the Yellow Pages were there to sell ads, but there was also a list of businesses in each category mixed in with it. I also don't trust Google Maps to pick up everything because of a missing hashtag or something. YP.com is a thing. My spouse works there and the website is the Yellow Pages. Yes, there are ads mostly at the top of the results, but all of the businesses are listed underneath the ads. I had a part-time job over the summer. I'm a teacher, verifying hours of operation and whether they were open or closed when the people would report them as incorrect. We would not call and verify the information on paid ads because we knew they gave the correct information, so there are tons of listings that are not ads. I still get them every year, and they always make great kindling for a backyard fire. Story 25. Lobster tanks in grocery stores. Not that I particularly want them back, but those are so nostalgic. My mom used to work at a grocery store and was good friends with the seafood clerk. Whenever we went to the store, the clerk would always take one of them out and let me pet it. Maybe not in a grocery store, but there are a lot of Asian restaurants in my city that still have them. Like you'd walk in and there'd be a massive tank of lobsters just crowded in there. And if you want to eat lobster, you could literally choose the specific one from the tank you wanted them to serve you. And yeah, as a kid, I thought it was cool. Now as an adult, it's just depressing seeing 30-something lobsters crammed into a tiny tank. Lobster tanks become progressively more depressing as you age. That is, if you aren't a psychopath. Story 26. Attention spans. Kinda hit or miss on that one. Like, TikTok is nowhere near as popular anymore as every company was making it out to be. During the pandemic, TikTok was the #1 in traffic. As of March 2023, it sits at number 16. Also, expect to see Reels and YouTube Shorts start to fade now that both companies realize the fad has worn off and they noticed how bad short-form content is to monetize. That being said, TikTok is still immensely popular, but it's now shrinking to find its equilibrium. I think I see way more 30-minute plus or or even 60-minute plus videos on YouTube. Especially in the mechanic or car builder circles, it's more a thing now to do a single 1 or 2 hour video about a project instead of multiple short episodes. I swear I see this in myself. Back before constant social media and smartphone use, I'm talking even the mid-2000s, I was much more focused, and I'm not a focused person naturally. Technology is a double-edged sword. Story 27. Grandfather clocks. It was almost a must-have decor. My company in the 80s gave it as a gift to employees for their 10th anniversary. When I was probably 10 or 11, I'm 35 now, my parents were all excited and they said they had a surprise and couldn't wait to show me. They got me so excited. It was a grandfather clock and I thought I was getting a dog. To this day, that is so confusing. They must have been so excited to finally have one. Yes, I remember as a kid, if someone had a grandfather clock in their house, they were seen as rich. We had one growing up, and friends who spent the night hated it. The tick-tocking would drive them insane, and finally my dad had to deactivate it. Story 28. Acid rain. Huge win for environmental action. Identified a problem, raised awareness, and implemented solutions which have mitigated most of the harm. Same for the ozone layer. Not yet for climate change. Yeah, the solution for acid rain turned out to be NAFTA. You don't get acid rain in the northeast of the US anymore when the factories in the Midwest shoving all the chemicals that make it out their smokestacks shut down. Acid rain still exists. It's just killing off parts of the rest of the world downwind of their manufacturing facilities. It's still the coolest sounding weather emergency. It's kind of a shame it's gone, in a way. Thanks for watching and or listening all the way to the end. If you have a similar story or suggestion that you would like to share, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe if you aren't yet. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel or pick one on the screen at the end of the video. Thanks again, and see you next time!